Welcome to Written by Hand, where we focus on comics and teaching.
Today I want to start by telling you how I decided to launch my writing workshop. I wanted to do an on-demand assessment, which is where I asked the kids to write a story without any teaching. So basically it's that pre-assessment for me to see what kids are coming in with. But before I did that, I decided I wanted to give them a leg up. I wanted to help them understand exactly what I wanted them to write. So I decided to do a write-around. A write-around is when you take, in this case, you take a story and you ask the kids to look, label, mark up anything that they're noticing about this kind of writing. So let me show you what it looks like and I can talk a little bit about how the process goes. So here, all I did is I chose a story that one of my kids from last year had written. You see I'm using paper choice, which has the place for a sketch and then time for the story down below. My student had written a 5-page story. And the question I posed was, what makes a story, or what's in a story? And my kids were writing things about like what happened in the story, about the events. They were writing a little bit about some of the characters that were in it. You see they circled like this is the main character. Another way that I got some of these posters for the write-around is I went on to the digital resources at Heinemann.com and I printed out, this is from the Up the Ladder digital resources. And again, you see that my kids marked up problem, setting, and they're like circling and annotating things. And the final thing that I did is I chose a text that I read aloud to the class. In this case, it is Amy Wu in The Warm Welcome, which I highly recommend. And I had the kids look at an excerpt of that. And again, my question was, what makes a story? What's in a story? So my kids were writing things like character. They said the plot was good. Now, what I noticed with my kids is they weren't able to explain what a plot was, but they understood that a story has a plot.
I'd like to wrap up by naming 3 points about write-arounds. I had 5 different samples for my students to look at. Why? Because I have 5 tables in my classroom. That's all. That's the only reason. So I wanted my kids to be able to get up, walk around the classroom, and for me not to have to worry about if any tables had the same sample. So we just moved clockwise around the classroom and everybody got to spend some time with different samples. I honestly don't even think every kid got to every sample, but they got to see a variety. Secondly, like I just said, the variety is my second point. I had a published text, I had some printed mentor text from the online resources from Heinemann. If you don't have access to that because you're not using this unit, you could use different kinds of writing. And thirdly, I use samples of my students' writing from last year. If you don't have access to those, or maybe this is your first time trying Writer's Workshop out or this kind of writing with your kids, maybe you're writing some sample stories trying to pass those off as kid writing. Make sure you don't make them too good. The third point I want to make is in the sample student writing that I shared, I left in the misspellings, the scribble outs, the messiness, because I want my students to know that I am not expecting perfection. I am expecting for them to try and fail, to try again, fail, to try, succeed, try, fail, try, succeed, that it's not going to be perfect the first time, that there's no way to go from here to here without trying, failing, and succeeding in various amounts in between. I was so glad that I took the time to do this write-around. It served the purpose of an informal assessment for me to see who had the language of story and who might need support in that, especially because I teach a class with kids who speak many different languages. Additionally, all of my kids were prepared for the very next day to come in and write a story for me.